It has to be about the best player available, and that has to be the path no matter what the need is on the football team. Welcome back to Mike Drop Sports, everybody. I'm Jason. Let's talk about what the Pittsburgh Steelers need to be focusing on here in the Combine ahead of the 2024 draft and where the Steelers need to keep their focus, and that is at the best player available at the time they pick. The Pittsburgh Steelers have tended to try to do that through the years. Yes, they've had some poor choices throughout the years in the draft, and we'll talk about some of them first-round picks here. Over about the last 12 years, we'll talk about how many they've picked on defense, how many they've picked on offense, etc. But the Pittsburgh Steelers have to continue that focus on just taking that best guy at the time, no matter what position that may be. And if the Pittsburgh Steelers stray from that, I think it begins to add some trouble. I think you begin to reach. I think you begin to look more at your needs and you try to fill those needs with players that necessarily might not be good fits. But if you are constantly focused on taking the best player available all the time as a general manager, as a coaching staff, I think you're opening yourself up to good things. All you're doing is trying to collect as many good players as possible, no matter where they may be, no matter what position they may be at. Because if you get that best player available, things tend to work out for you. You're not sitting there saying, well, this guy is probably the seventh best athlete remaining on the board, but he is the last center and the last good center, and we need to go out and get him right now. That's just a path that you don't need to follow. And we want to say shout out to Omar Khan because he had a death in the family, and we want to send our condolences, and hopefully his family's doing well. You never want to hear that from anybody or any family. You never want to see that kind of stuff happen, and we really want to just say, hopefully he is doing okay, and hopefully his family's okay. And anybody else out there in the world that is dealing with anything like that, it's tough, man. So Omar Khan may not be available for things, during this combine since he had that tragedy happen. But that's one thing I want you guys to remember, that Omar did have this go on, and he's not probably going to be talking with other teams' general managers and things like that if you're trying to hope for a trade or something like that. I think Omar's probably focused on his family right now, and you can't blame the man for that. So we'll just see how that plays out. There's some other news concerning maybe traded players and things of that nature that we may have time to get to during this show. But the Pittsburgh Steelers throughout the years here, we'll say about the last 12 years, I don't know if they've always taken the best player available. Maybe they've tried to, which is where they need to be. But I don't think they have constantly done that. Over the years here in the last 12, they've taken 8 defensive players in the first round with their first round selections and 4 offensive players throughout those years. And in 2020, they had 0 selections in the first round, and that was a trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick, where they gave up their first round selection to the Miami Dolphins. So over the years you've seen, we'll start like with 2011, you had Cam Hayward. So Cam Hayward has been in this league since 2011. That's when he came in as a rookie with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was drafted number 31 overall. And I think at that time, Cam was the best player on the board. And I felt like they stuck to that. And they did. They came out with a real big-time player. And Cam has proven that over the years. And then you follow that up the very next season with the selection of David DeCastro, 24th overall. I think they stuck to it there with another solid pick with David DeCastro. You don't typically get an offensive lineman like David DeCastro that late in the draft, a guy that pans out to be that good. And I know that's not entirely late. It's still the first round. But those elite guys are usually taken pretty early. But David DeCastro, it was a solid pick. He was the best player available at that time in my eyes. And then you look at number 17 overall in the 2013 draft, and it was Jarvis Jones. Jarvis Jones never panned out, and I think they tried to reach there to get a outside linebacker in Jarvis Jones, a guy that was supposed to be an elite pass rusher and really be able to be a wrecking ball back there. And he just never panned out, was never able to truly develop. So that pick I felt like was a little bit of a reach. Then you look at 2014 and they go inside linebacker in with the 15th overall selection. They draft a guy named Ryan Shazier, a guy that was on pace to have a Hall of Fame type career. He was really a lights out inside linebacker, and they have yet to be able to replace him since then. Since his injury and since 2015, I don't think the Steelers have really been, or 2014 rather, I don't think the Steelers have really been able to get that quality inside linebacker since Ryan and since that devastating injury in Cincinnati to where it left him paralyzed. Now he's been able to walk again, thankfully, by God's grace, and well wishes to Ryan Shazier. That's a very tough situation that he had going on when he was on pace for an all-pro Hall of Fame type career. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, I felt there, took the best player available at the time with the 15th overall pick. And then you move into that next year, and this one's a iffy one. Bud Dupree. I felt like he was a little bit weak in his first couple years. He was drafted 22nd overall, and I still think he may have been the best player available at that time, but it might have been in the middle there to where maybe they were reaching a little bit to get that outside linebacker help, especially after the 2013 draft where Jarvis Jones was a failure. And I think they were trying to fill that need and get somebody in there that was, elite and had the potential to be elite. And Bud Dupree ended up being a pretty decent ball player once TJ Watt came around. And you look at the following year in 2016 with the 25th overall pick, which was one hell of a bust. And I think they really reached here. And that was with Artie Burns. Artie Burns never, ever lived up to the first round hype. And I think they really, really drafted in that spot out of a positional need instead of best player available on the board. And I think Artie Burns was a mistake by the Steelers. And that really kick-started that inability, really emphasized not being able to get a cornerback in the building through the draft. They weren't able to identify them correctly throughout the years. And Artie Burns, I really felt like emphasized, hey, we're not very good at this. So the Pittsburgh Steelers then move with a steal in the draft, if you ask me. And this was their 2017 pick, and that was with TJ Watt. 30th overall, guys. It's amazing that he made it there. Some may have thought that he wasn't the best player available, but the Steelers really were able to identify this guy in a big way, and they may have gotten lucky, but they went with the last name. They identified that he could be a potential star in this league, and they hit a home run with TJ Watt, being the best defender in the NFL today. In my eyes, the most complete defender there is. A guy that is a complete game changer in TJ Watt, and that was a stellar first-round pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially with a pick so late in that first round to really hit a home run like that was really special, and that was a good one. And I think they went for the best player available there. And then you look at the 2018 pick of Terrell Edmunds. I think they were really wholeheartedly trying to get the best player available, but they were still reaching a little bit because they were trying to fill a need. And that was with Terrell Edmunds. And that was the 28th overall pick. And Terrell Edmunds, guys, is a phenomenal athlete, a guy that really takes care of himself, a phenomenal athlete, guys, but just really hasn't panned out to be that elite talent at safety. I think he's a good ball player, and I think he fit with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Do I think he was the greatest of all time? Absolutely not. I feel like he still has some deficiencies in his game, and he's even rumored to possibly be making a return to the Pittsburgh Steelers after being sent over to the Philadelphia Eagles, signing with the Philadelphia Eagles, and then the Eagles trading him in the middle of the year to the Tennessee Titans. And now it seems as though maybe Terrell be looking for another team here in 2024. So Terrell Edmunds may be back in the black and gold. You never know how that goes. But I think that was another riding the fence type pick. Trying to still pick for a positional need and still trying to get a phenomenal athlete, like maybe the best player. But I think it was still a little bit of a reach, but I won't call it a complete reach. And then you looked at 2019, and they freaking reached so hard to fill that inside linebacker spot, guys. And they drafted in 2019 10th overall, moving up from the 20th pick to get Devin Bush, a guy that never worked out. He had a nice little rookie season, I believe, and definitely showed some promise. And then once that ACL tear happened, he was a completely different player and never panned out. And the Pittsburgh Steelers sent him to Seattle, to where he's played a little bit, but he's never lived up to that number 10 overall pick selection by the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2019. And I think the Steelers were really reaching there. I don't think they got the right Devin in that draft. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers selected Devin White just ahead of them, and that's where the Steelers, I think they really wanted to be, was with Devin White. But they moved up, spent some draft capital, and moved up into the 10th overall spot, and they reached for a guy and they missed, desperately trying to find a guy to replace Ryan Shazier still in the 2019 draft after Shazier was hurt. And it's like, man, what a reach by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that was a failure. And then in 2020, they had no pick, guys, and that was, again, the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade, where they gave away their first-round pick to the Miami Dolphins, and I feel like that trade worked out. I feel like they had been reaching for a couple seasons in a row prior. Terrell Edmonds, Devin Bush, Terrell wasn't a super reach, but it was still a little bit of a reach. So they were trying to get back on track, and I think Minkah would have been better than anybody they would have probably selected there. Minkah, an all-pro safety. So they ended up getting Minkah in that trade, and I think that worked really well. And then they turned to the offensive side of the football in 2021 with the selection 24th overall in the first round of Najee Harris, Alabama running back, a guy that has a lot of potential. Travis Etienne, I believe, was still on the board. So they could have got both of those guys around that area, but, you know, who's better, who's not. I like Etienne a little bit better. I think he's a more complete back for today's NFL. I still think Najee Harris is a quality player, but I still think it was a little bit of a reach. I'm not sure if it was the best player available. That's another one of those I'm riding on the fence type deals with Najee. I don't hate the pick, and I don't love the pick. So it's one of those in the middle things. And yes, they needed a running back, but, you know, was it a desperate need? But they filled it anyway, and they filled it with Najee Harris. And then in 2022, I feel like they've reached big time here. With the departure of Ben Roethlisberger, the Steelers desperately searching for that next franchise quarterback. And then you have the Pitt kid coming from across the building, still there when you're picking at number 20 in the 2022 draft. And I think the Pittsburgh Steelers desperately reached for Kenny Pickett. I don't think that he was a first-round talent, but the Steelers nonetheless reached for Kenny. And now here we are in this situation with the quarterback dilemma that still remains on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster, as Kenny Pickett is the lone man in that quarterback room. So you look at Kenny Pickett and you say to yourself, man, what could they have done if they had really went out and got the best player available there? Maybe they should have tried to fill that quarterback need in another way. What do you guys think about Kenny? Was he a monster reach? In my eyes, I think he was a huge reach for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'm not sure if they couldn't have got him way later in the draft, if that's who they really wanted, and actually took the best player available at that time in a very weak quarterback class in 2022. And then last year, I feel like they hit a home run. And I feel like that was with Broderick Jones. I feel like he was still the best player available at the time. He was the number, 17 overall pick, or 14th maybe, I can't remember. But anyway, they traded up a little bit to get him, and they jumped ahead of the Jets, and they grabbed Broderick Jones, and I think it was one in which they hit a home run because they still filled a position of heavy need in my eyes. And I still feel like they got the best player available at that time in Broderick Jones. I felt like he was a star in the making, and I still feel like he could be a star in the making. But we'll have to see if they get him over to that left tackle spot and that Dan Moore Jr. can actually go over and learn that right tackle. But let's continue with this draft talk. There you hear there's picks, the Steelers picks from 2011 till present day in that first round. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, again, drafting 8 defensive players to 4 offensive players. And the Steelers have always emphasized defense, even throughout the Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher years. And this Pittsburgh Steelers find themselves probably still looking in that direction. After day one of the NFL Combine and meetings and things of that nature, many have the Pittsburgh Steelers linked to possibly going inside linebacker or defensive tackle in the first round of the NFL draft. I'm not sure what you guys think about that. I don't think it would be in the first round. I think maybe if you're going to get an inside linebacker, you're looking at more in the third round, maybe somewhere around there. Maybe even defensive tackle, you're looking with your third or fourth round selection. You have 2 fourth-round picks, 119 and 120. I still think there will be some guys that are able to make a difference. You're not going to get a probably Hall of Fame type guy, but I think you're still going to be able to get a quality defensive tackle. I think you could still pick up an inside linebacker, middle to mid rounds, we'll say. I don't think maybe 5 or 6 you're probably pushing it to get anybody really quality, anybody that's really going to be a major contributor day one. I still think the Pittsburgh Steelers try to get in that best player available mentality for round one and round two, and I really hope they do. We'll see how this all pans out, but the Pittsburgh Steelers find themselves in a position to where they can go for best player available because there are several holes along this Pittsburgh Steelers roster, both offensively and defensively. So if you're looking at the Steelers and you say to yourself, oh, they picked a cornerback in round one, would you really hate it? Because it is a need. They need to match somebody up with Joey Porter Jr. because you're not sure what you have in Darius Rush or Corey Trice. You're not 1,000% there. You're not 1,000% that Patrick Peterson is even going to return in his elevated age in terms of NFL years. A guy that possibly could save some cap money, so you're not sure what you're going to do there. So if you do get a cornerback, it's not going to be a horrible thing. You're not going to be devastated by that pick. What if the Steelers go out and grab a right tackle? That's not going to be a devastatingly bad pick. Why? Because you're not sure if Dan Moore Jr. has the ability to move over to the right tackle spot. We've never been told why he can't go over there and play. So you wouldn't hate that pick also. Even if they pick that, it's going to add some quality depth to that offensive line. And hopefully the guy they draft would become the starter. And maybe Dan Moore Jr. a backup. And he would be very serviceable as a NFL backup at the tackle position behind Broderick Jones and another stud star rookie guy that has the potential for a very high ceiling. You wouldn't hate that pick. What if they picked the center? What if a guy like Jackson Powers Johnson fell to them at 20? You wouldn't hate that pick either because they desperately need a center, especially after the release of Mason Cole, who had a very troubled season in 2023. So you wouldn't hate those picks. So there are options for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and there's no real wrong way here, guys, because there are needs. There are several positions of need on the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's safety need, inside linebacker, corner, defensive tackle. Then you turn to the offensive side of the football. You don't know what you have at quarterback. You desperately need a center. You need to fill out the tackle position. Maybe possibly a slot receiver somewhere in this draft. So there are holes, but the Pittsburgh Steelers have to continue to focus on best player available, no matter where that player plays. Why? Because I think it's the correct path, and I feel that that is the way that you build a football team, no matter what. If you're going to look for positional needs and that is your sole focus, that is what free agency is for. That is what trades are for. You go out and get proven commodities if you're doing that. If you're going after position only and that is your focus. You have to be a guy in with the general managers, with the coaching staffs that always is looking for the best athlete, the best guy on that football field, no matter where they play. I don't care where it is, but as long as it's the best guy, the highest ranking guy on your board at all times whenever you're picking, especially for those first 3 rounds. In my eyes anyway, I think that that's where the Steelers need to go. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, guys, have to do this, in my opinion, to be successful in the 2024 draft. I felt like Omar Khan did an excellent job last year, and I felt like he was taking some players that were best available at the time of the Pittsburgh Steelers selection. So I wasn't truly hateful of his draft. I thought it was one of the better ones throughout the years, one of the better ones since for several years, because I felt like Kevin Colbert hadn't been as productive in the draft as he had in the past with some of the picks. Kevin Colbert Didn't hit all the time, guys. So hopefully Omar Khan continues his steadiness at the helm here as the general manager and continues to bring in quality athletes and picks best player available here for the future and for the foreseeable future anyway for the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, guys, don't forget our live show tonight at about 6:45 Eastern Standard Time here on Mike Drop Sports. I'll be joined by your boy Sean tonight as we dissect all this Steeler news, all the combine stuff going on, and fielding your questions, comments, and concerns in the live chat. Also, hit that like button, guys, and share our content. And as we continue to march forward here, last night we fell like 13, 14 subscribers short of our goal. So let's hit that tonight. I know we can hit it. We might even hit it before the live show comes today. But we want to hit that 2,000 goal tonight to hit that milestone that we set here for ourselves at Mike Drop Sports. And next, we'll be moving on to that 5,000 mark here, and then after that we have one more goal set, and that is our 20,000 subscriber mark. That's where we're headed. That's where we want to be. So help us along with that journey as we continue to really hammer down on the content. Even though it's the off season, you're still going to get daily uploads here at Mike Drop Sports. You're still going to get the realness of a smaller channel as opposed to some of these bigger channels that have ties to these organizations that maybe can't say some of the things that we can say. So we're going to be as truthful as possible. We're going to try to give you the realest shit as possible. And until next time, I'm Jason. This is Mike Drop Sports, and we'll see you tonight. Peace.